Welcome. We're delighted to have you here. My name is Tanya Brody Rudolph, and I'm a South African, I'm an international ocean lawyer and the co-lead of Towards IPOS initiative. So our agenda for today, briefly, we're going to give you a quick reminder about why an IPOS is necessary and why this is such an important conversation. We're going to provide a debrief of our global consultation process that we've just completed. We're going to offer a strategic overview update, so our refined strategy as a result of the consultation process. And then I'm going to hand over to Maxime to take you through our current support and the next steps. And then, of course, really importantly, we're going to have a Q&A session so that you can ask all the questions that you have. And for those of you who've joined us for IPOS webinars before, you'll recognize some elements of this presentation, but you'll also see the changes and the updates that have occurred as a result of our global consultation process and the way that we've refined the strategy as a result of that feedback. So to place us in context for this conversation and to understand why this is so important, why we need accelerated action for this ocean crisis that we're facing, is we're all aware of how the state of the ocean is deteriorating from climate change and pollution and overfishing. And we are really far from achieving our global sustainability targets that we have collectively agreed as humanity, such as SDG 14 or the Global Biodiversity Framework targets. This map is very telling. This is the results from this year's progress or lack of progress rather towards SDG 14. And we have 5 years to change this map to green. Of course, the past few years, the ocean has come into center stage in the international arena, and we've seen the international community mobilizing around several ocean initiatives and the Blue Agenda, which has been a source of hope. But there is so much more that needs to be done, so much additional capacity that needs to be brought. And while we recognize there is a multiplicity of elements that hinder the functionality of the science to policy interface, one of the enablers that we've identified over a period of the last 2.5 years of benchmarking and analysis is a better functioning knowledge to policy interface. The momentum and the speed of the co-constructed evolution of the IPOS concept has been incredible. And I think it reflects the resonance that it has with so many different stakeholders, from scientists to policymakers to other stakeholders. From our very first presentation to the international community in February 2022 at the One Ocean Summit in Brest in France, we then presented at the second UN Ocean Conference in Lisbon. And in February 2024, we received the official support of the European Union to conduct a feasibility study and to extend the feasibility study that we started last year on environmental knowledge. Last year, we looked at the range of environmental knowledge that's available across the ocean seascape in global environmental processes and assessments. And we've just completed a similar assessment, but of social and economic knowledge. We've also developed a best practices handbook with the analysis of more than 30 global environmental processes and assessments, which represent the state-of-the-art synthesis of the very best of the different institutions around the world that can help to shape and guide the evolution of the IPOS. We've also developed a series of best practices for the secretariat functions. And some of you may know that we've just completed this year an intensive consultation process with a global online survey, which closed at the end of October. And I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you to those of you who participated. We had an incredible response to the survey, and we know it took time, and we're really grateful for the inputs because they have helped us shape our strategy and process. We've also been engaged in many bilateral workshops. We had a seminar in Barcelona where we synthesized and extracted all of the feedbacks that we received from the global consultation process. We have also developed an interim advisory board of experts that are either present on other global institutions, other global environmental processes, or very experienced practitioners at the science policy interface. We have also developed a knowledge committee development team, and this is an innovative instrument that we'll tell you a bit more about in our governance section. We've also been in dialogue with many UN organizations, and the consultation with these organizations and with states and other key stakeholders continues. But we have taken the results of this global consultation process and have assimilated them into an updated strategy, which we are presenting to you today. And this is where we are now. And in the upcoming months, we are preparing for a potential launch at the UN Ocean Conference. If everything goes according to plan, we will be launching at the next UN Ocean Conference in Nice in June 2025. And in the run-up to that phase, we're developing branding and marketing concept, which we'll share with you in a moment. We're also developing a communication strategy because we know how important it is to communicate science really well in an accessible and relatable way for it to have impact. We have multiple events that are ongoing, and we're very engaged in political outreach and development with states and with UN agencies presently. After our launch at the UN Ocean Conference next year, we will have a period of a test period, where we would propose that the IPOS services that we'll present to you today will be tested and adapted and tweaked and changed in order to respond to the lessons that are learned during that test period, for a final ramping up to a fully operational IPOS, which can serve states and groups of states in meeting action for their sustainability targets. So to come back to the consultation, we have some key figures to share with you. We had 121 respondents to the survey, and these respondents were carefully selected from different geographies and backgrounds and disciplines. And it's important to know that out of these 121 respondents, there were also institutional responses, which represent multiple voices and opinions of institutions that were negotiated internally and then submitted as a single response. We have extracted 700 data points or quotes from this consultation process, which was very rich, and we've synthesized this into 56 descriptors of do's and don'ts to shape the IPOS evolution and the strategy. We've conducted 15 workshops with intergovernmental and international organizations and with states, and we've established the 2 IPOS committees that I mentioned earlier, which involve 27 experts, all of whom are preparing structured comments and inputs. And these 2 committees are the Interim Advisory Board and the Knowledge Committee Development Team, which we'll go into in a moment. So what were the results of this consultation process, and how have we integrated them? We're going to just give you a snapshot of some of the key elements that came out of the consultation process. So one of the key points that came from respondents was that IPOS needs to ensure that its positioning and its services that it offers add value to the existing knowledge to policy interface, and that these services can contribute to accelerating ocean action. What was wonderful to see was that 81% of our respondents agreed or strongly agreed that our proposed services will indeed add value and contribute to accelerating ocean action. We also received feedback that the name of these services doesn't correspond to a panel and that the name should be changed. We were told that a two-way dialogue is really necessary at this interface to operate between knowledge and policy, between scientists and policymakers and other knowledge holders. Respondents said that governance needs to be more decentralized so that it can allow for more local empowerment and better contextualization of IPOS outputs. One of the elements that was most commonly mentioned was the need to clarify the positioning and collaboration model with existing initiatives to ensure that IPOS is additive and synergistic and not duplicative. We had, I have the draft report here, we had 72 respondents mentioning this point. And ideally, the IPOS should position itself as a new service to reinforce existing efforts, rather than presenting itself as a new organization to be built from scratch. So we have integrated this feedback and a consultation report is being drafted and will be shared probably early January with all of the details of this global consultation. But essentially, we have updated our strategic positioning into a high-level strategy which reflects updated services, new governance proposition, an improved approach and way of working. And we're also developing a blueprint which will include all of the operational details of exactly how an IPOS should be working in practice to reflect all of the best practices that we've assessed. So our new name, we have changed the name to an international platform for ocean sustainability. And we feel that platform is much more inclusive and open for collaboration. So we're very happy to switch our name to the International Platform for Ocean Sustainability. We also have a new brand, thanks to our communications team in our consortium, which we really like, with bright colors, which feels very action-oriented and inspiring. The handwritten element of the font, and it reflects a sense of the water. So we're very excited to begin using our new branding, and you will see our screensavers for this webinar reflect our branding for the first time. So to come back to the mission, the core of the IPOS, which is to bridge ocean knowledge and action. The ocean crisis requires knowledge-based, rapid, additive, efficient, equitable, and measurably impactful action to achieve global targets. How will the IPOS do this? Firstly, IPOS will support states and groups of states when there is a transboundary or shared challenge to accelerate concrete action on international commitments such as SDG 14 or the Biodiversity Framework targets. IPOS will be the first global instrument offering demand-driven ocean knowledge and solution options at national and regional scales. And IPOS will provide an enabling mechanism to help close the gap between knowledge and policy and build on existing efforts. How will IPOS do this? How will these services weave existing knowledge and expertise into action-oriented and context-specific solutions? We propose 3 services. The first is an action request, and this would take place within a period of 12 months. Countries or groups of countries would submit a request for ocean-relevant knowledge, which is aimed at fulfilling a specific global sustainability target. IPOS would then activate an ad hoc hybrid working group of global and local experts to respond to this request. And at the bottom, you'll see that this hybrid working group would consist of a multiple range of experts from UN bodies to academia, to civil society, private sector, and IPLC. And we would hope to see it include representatives or chairs of existing environmental organizations to ensure that the ocean action requests that are responded to represent synthesized knowledge and a systems approach. These outcomes will be co-developed and with peer-reviewed processes according to best practices and tailored to the specific context of the requesting state or states. In parallel, there will be another service which will be much more rapid. This will be a response within a number of weeks. And the objective here is to provide answers to urgent, time-sensitive requests for ocean knowledge. And the way that we will achieve this is through a tool that we're developing with bespoke AI capabilities. And Maxime will take you through that a little bit later in more detail with a pilot study. But essentially, this tool is being built to synthesize curated information into accessible and concise formats that will then be reviewed by experts and be able to guide states with some options within a matter of weeks. And then the third service is, in essence, a service to balance the science policy interface, to balance the top-down approach that traditionally exists with knowledge to policy, and to bring a more bottom-up approach to balance this interface. You'll see that the name has not been set yet because we're still in the process of developing the service and really thinking about how it would work in practice and to assimilate the very best way of creating open avenues for mechanisms for foresight and outreach, for reporting and engagement that catalyzes action towards sustainability targets. So we're we're discussing the names Forum, Pulse, or Catalyst. And the objective is really to embrace all knowledge and all voices to ensure that the science policy interface is informed by a wide range of stakeholders that are at the interface of the ocean. The objective is to propel action, and the detailed form and process is, as I said, in development, but will be following shortly. So how will IPOS adopt an innovative approach to accelerate impact? These 5 elements have been developed as a process during our benchmarking for the past 2 years, and also through our development of best practices. The first is that IPOS will be demand-driven. So it will not be generating knowledge of its own accord, but rather responding to specific requests from states on particular issues that they need support with or options for that relate to global sustainability targets. IPOS will produce inclusive knowledge by weaving different sources of knowledge and equitably empowering representative experts from diverse backgrounds and disciplines that are relevant to each request. IPOS outputs, that's quite a mouthful, will be contextually relevant by being tailored to regional and local contexts, recognizing each state or groups of states' environmental, social, economic, and cultural specificities. Responses will be timely, and decision makers will be receiving knowledge within accelerated timelines. And finally, and really core value for the IPOS is to be transparent. The IPOS structure and its processes will be fully transparent, including openly accessible protocols, open access data, and open communication forms. My last slide for this morning, or this afternoon, is on our proposed decentralized governance structure. So this is a new proposition that's been developed as a result of the consultation process, and it's essentially a collaborative governance model which combines regional expertise with global coordination, engaging stakeholders at all levels for effective implementation. So it looks like a lot, but if we just start in the box titled IPOS, at the middle, there is a central coordination unit which operates as in a similar way to a secretariat, really coordinating all of the processes that the services that IPOS will deliver, ensuring that it adheres to its principles and guidelines that have been developed and is true to its principles that have been established. This will be also overseen and facilitated by a steering committee. The regional approach that we've adopted here in this governance model is a proposition to use UN economic commissions as a way of establishing regional offices. One of the feedbacks you'll remember from the global consultation process was that we should be additive, using existing infrastructure, complementing existing systems. So the UN Economic Commission's distribution is a way of aligning the concurrent global processes across the planet and aligning with these regional offices, which they could collaborate with the regional SEAS programs within their continents. The central coordination team and regional team will be supported by 2 committees, an advisory board, and here we would imagine that there would be heads of other environmental assessment organizations included, as well as very experienced experts to help shape and guide IPOS processes and think about strategic directions and lessons learned during the processes, and to really bring a synthesis and systems approach to the knowledge that's developed. The second committee is this innovative governance tool called the Knowledge Committee, which we're developing with the Knowledge Development Committee team. And the Knowledge Committee will shepherd equitable and inclusive collaboration and implementation of technical and scientific expertise of the services. So this will bring different types of experts into a Knowledge Committee that will shape and respond to the requests that we receive. The partners for the IPOS are listed here, and that would obviously be states and groups of states, but also existing scientific institutions and existing panels, intergovernmental organizations such as OECD, UN-related organizations, private sector, indigenous peoples and local communities, civil society, and youth organizations. So that was a lot of information, and I'm going to invite you to take a break while I hand over to Maxime to take you through the balance of the presentation on support and next steps. Maxime.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Good morning, evening, everyone. So I'm Maxime Delille. I'm the General Secretary of the Ocean Sustainability Foundation that has been created by Tanya Brody-Rodolphe and Françoise Guy to push this IPOS initiative. Very happy to have you all here tonight. I will just start with one logistic comment. For question, go please to the Q&A and not to the chat. It's going to be much easier for all of us to answer. Thank you. What I wanted to discuss briefly with you, maybe for the 10-15 next minutes, is to show the supports we have from different range of stakeholders. The idea is that the IPOS is co-constructed and with plenty of stakeholders. So presents on the scientific side, but also the political side, and then kind of explore with you where we want to go. And then I'm going to go to the timeline for the next 6 months and then the next 2 years. And finally, I'm going to present the 3 pilot projects we are running to give you an examples of what could it be. So first thing, and this is how the IPOS kind of started, is that with a big support from the scientific community. We created nearly 2 years ago a coalition of scientific institutions. Back then, it was 17 institutions, mostly from Europe, and now we expanded this coalition of scientific institutions up to 29 now. We hope to have 50 by UNOC, and it's like institutions that actually support the idea, are pushing for it, and have had a key role in the co-development of the IPOS. Members from this institution really participated in the co-design of the IPOS strategic overview during this consultation, and several of them are you that are some are online, actually are actively involved in the pilot project. This is not the end, it's just the beginning. So we are running an expansion process to make sure that we have some more from large range of geographies. We already have an institution from the 5 continents, but we want to go way beyond. If we want to go to the policy side now, Tanya? Yes. Another kind of actors or stakeholders we engaged a lot was states. As Tanya said, the mission of the IPOS is to support state in the implementation of the sustainability goals. And so we engaged for longer with states, and we already have several high-level support from, I would say, 4 countries plus the European Commission. The European Commission has been behind us from nearly the beginning in terms of political support, but also in terms of financial support. We have France, who has been a powerful ambassador for long. And we think I've seen in the list of members, we have some representative of France who joined us. Then we have Monaco also. The Prince of Monaco officially supported the IPOS last September at the UN General Assembly. The President of China also. And the newcomers is Chile. Since 2 weeks, the President of Chile expressed official interest of his country. Then we have like other categories of countries with who we engage in. With a less of official support, but expressed has been interested by nearly 10 countries from all across the globe, and we are running plenty of discussions with several countries. I've seen some colleagues from Belgium that are online, but also like from all across the globe. And the objective is for us, by UNOC, to have a coalition of states. Is it 10, is it 15, is it 20, is it 50 that actually officially support the IPOS? The need for it, the urgency for the ocean crisis, and the value proposition that makes sense for countries. So we know it's a long process, but we are moving on. So we focus first on countries and science or scientific institution, but we know and we are already started to engage with plenty of other kind of stakeholders because if we want to have a systemic approach, then we need to engage with nearly everyone. So we started a lot. I will stop on the top left of this kind of beautiful flower with a UN organization. We believe, or since all this consultation made us believe that UN seems to be the natural home for the IPOS. If we want to be global, if you want to be holistic, if you want to be legitimate, UN would be a legitimate home. So we started to engage with several institutions. Would it be IOC, UNESCO? Would make a lot of sense. Doha laws, we discussed with them with UNEP, and we also started to engage with other organizations. One example, we want to engage with UN economic commissions. Why so? That we strongly believe that, or there is a need for the IPOs to get out of the blue ocean bubble, and building bridges with economic commission will allow the IPOs to do so. Same contacts needs to be done with the regional Cs or with organizations like GESAMP, who has been leading some scientific effort for long. So this kind of effort, but also starting discussion with plenty of panels, especially the World Ocean Assessment. For long, we said how we can be coherent, how can we be synergetic, how we can coordinate with World Ocean Assessment to make sure that we leverage amazing work that has been done by the World Ocean Assessment, but like by the IPCC, IPBES, to make sure that we take the latest knowledge and we use it for the IPOs. Science, I've already covered it. Then talking with intergovernmental organizations like the OECD, ICES, PICES, but also with the private sector and finance to make sure that these actors, practitioners are involved either in the way we design our policy options, but also in the funding of the IPOs. And then if we go continuing the loop, IPLCs is also critical, is at the heart of the vision of the IPOs. In the transdisciplinary and the inclusivity, it still has to be structured in the coming semester, but we are working on it, as well as working with the civil society and youth organization. Yeah, Tanya, you can go next. So 2 slides to come. One is on the next step and the timeline. As you can see, there is something happening soon at UNOC. So the next 6 months will be focusing on 2 things. First, we believe, and we had discussion, that the UN Ocean Decade might be a great accelerator for the IPOs and might allow us to start a kind of test phase as soon as we can, which is nearly in 3 months. So in the coming months, we're gonna focus on applying to become a Decade collaborative center or a Decade coordination office within the Ocean Decade. And this will allow us to have kind of a potential official launch at UNOC. At UNOC, what we want to have is that have this coalition of states behind us, have this enriched coalition of scientific institutions behind us, and have also a large range of partners who are with us for this test period. We'll have right after it a stage gate, because we know that something which is key is funding. So we must secure the funding before we actually start the test phase. The budget for now, which has been estimated, is around 3 million euros. It still needs to be refined, but at least you have an order of magnitude of this budget. This will be like a test phase for 3 million. And once we ramp up for the run phase, this will go up to 10 million. So then we have this 24 months of test phase to make sure that what we have designed in this consultation process makes sense. We learn a lot. And then 2027, it will be full development at scale to make sure that we can actually make as much impact as possible for states and for the ocean. And just to start, we didn't want to focus only on concepts and ideas, but we wanted to actually start things on the ground as much as we could. So we started 3 pilot projects that are kind of good examples of what could be done. It was pilot project, it was experiments. What we have been starting is not perfect, but because we are learning by walking, but we started one project, the deep sea mining project, which could be linked to what we would do as a ocean action request. So it's a state asking a specific question on a specific topic. And then based on this, we designed a working group, international working group, to answer. The question that was asked is that, what does the scientific community say on the deep sea resources exploitation? It has been asked by one head of state, which is President Macron, President of France, and we are about to complete the work that will be publicly delivered in March 2025. The next project we have is on IPLC engagement. Really, the objective is how do we actually incorporate IPLC knowledge into the IPOS approach? It's very easy to say, very difficult to do. And we have the great opportunity to find some partners in Costa Rica. I know Vivian Solis, you're online, but great partners from Costa Rica to see how can we actually make sure that this vision of the IPOS makes sense. So we are building a case study on one target, which is 30 by 30 target. And we started to engage with small-scale fishers communities, scientific institutions, and next step is also with the government of Costa Rica to make sure that we have all the stakeholders around the table. It's still like the status for now is still the funding call. We are looking for later donors to come. And the idea is to have something presented at UNOC in June 2025. And the last pilot project we do is on artificial intelligence. So this will help us in the quick response. So the service number 2 that Tanya presented. And the idea was really to say, there is amazing innovation going on these days with AI and the large language model. I think maybe most of us use ChatGPT. But the idea was to say, how can we use something similar to help an organization like the IPOS in its mission to support state? But we don't want to use a black box like ChatGPT. We need to have something which is credible. We need to have, which is something which is based on only like approved knowledge. So we are developing right now with an amazing team of a tech team, a bespoke LLM, which is currently being tested. The code name for now is IPOS Ocean GPT. And the idea is to have something that the IPOS team will be able to use once there is a question from the state, leverage also the expertise from few experts to do the peer review, and using really the precautionary approach. We are working very hard to make sure that the tool actually doesn't hallucinate, and what is getting out of the tool is actually only based on science and robust information. And this is why we are also making sure that this tool for now will be only for internal use, with always a human in between. And then once we have made sure that it's actually robust enough, we'll be able to expand it further away. We are very happy because we are actually starting a project with the government of Seychelles. The delivery and the completion of this project will be April 2025, and hopefully we'll be able to present it. We are working hard to organize something at UNOC, so you can all test it or at least see how it goes, how it works. Yeah, that was it for our presentation. Now the objective was to give you the floor for Q&A. So if you want to go in the chat, questions, remarks, ideas, please be free. And then we are also welcoming Guillermo from the team will be able to answer the question with Tanya and myself, and maybe Luca also will be here.
Great, thanks, Maxime.
You want to start the first question, Tanya?
I haven't read the questions because I've been screen sharing, so I have to quickly catch up.
All right. So what does membership of the scientific coalition means? For now, it's been, so on the coalition of scientific institutions, we have 29 institutions, and it's the same for states. The level of engagement is pretty light for now. It's two things. First, it's kind of an official document for the scientific institution. It's a document that has been signed, a letter of intent or MOU that has been signed saying, yes, we support the idea and we're happy to contribute. And then on a voluntary base, we had specific individuals from this institution that were involved a bit more, either in the consultation, participating at the individual level or at the institutional level. And then some of them are also involved in the pilot project. For now, it's what we have been doing. On the long run, it's still to be discussed, and Guillermo, maybe if you want to add, the idea is like the members of like expert from the institution, from the coalition, will be able to join our hybrid working group and join the team and work on this project.
Yeah, thanks, Maxime, and good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Like Maxime said, IPOS will rely this delivery of the services will rely on bringing the relevant knowledge holders in a timely manner to respond to the different service requests. So the coalition of scientific institutions will probably form the backbone of a broader knowledge network that IPOS will have to bring together to deliver on the services. So you could see this as the institutional component of the network through which we could reach out to, in this case, scientific knowledge holders worldwide. And like Maxime said, who would, on a voluntary basis, make themselves available to peer review the outputs of this large language model, or for the ocean action request to make themselves available to form part of these national, regional, and international hybrid working groups to help a given state or group of states deliver on that service. So in the future, I think this coalition will, again, play a big role in making sure that we have access to the right scientific expertise across ocean regions.
Thanks, Guillermo. The next question is around a host for the Decade Collaboration Center or Coordination Office. And yes, we have been in conversation with UN agencies, with IOC and with UNEP around the Decade Coordination Center and Decade Coordination Office. And this is still in process and an ongoing conversation that we're developing. So we hope to have more news on that in the coming months. The experts on the deep sea mining project.
Yeah, sure. So it was a kind of a learning curve, but what we designed, so the experts, we have a scientific committee of 18 people. Within this 18 people, we have two co-chairs, one from Mexico, and Elva, I know you're here. Elva Escobar Briones from Mexico. And we have also another co-chair, which is from Portugal, Ricardo Serrano Santos. And this co-chair actually really led the initiative and the selection of the experts. And the objective of these experts was for us to test our kind of inclusivity and transdisciplinary guidelines. So we had a selection criteria to make sure we had experts from different range of expertise, academic science, but also beyond, and also have like social scientists, economists, sociologists, etc. And then to have a very large diversity of regions and countries. So we have 18 specialists and maybe 16 nationalities, also including youth. And based on this principle, we made sure we had like this expert identified. And this is really how it's going to be working once we have the working group set on the IPOS. We'll be running a set of criteria to make sure that we have a large diversity of stakeholders engaged in the working group. This one for deep sea was a test phase for us. What we want to go is even beyond, to include more people from the private sector, from civil society, from IPLCs. For the deep sea project, we mostly focus mostly on scientists, starting to go a bit beyond. And next step, once we'll be running, we'll go way beyond this.
Thanks, Maxime. Caroline has asked why we're not organizing by ocean basins. And it's a valid question and one that we have thought about. Absolutely. I think the point of, our thinking around the economic commissions, Maxime mentioned that we just thought about breaking out of this ocean bubble and really starting to look at the economic focus, which is a major focus for many countries around the world, and the social challenges as well, and that the UN economic commissions are very well established and set up and function, which would be easy to dovetail with. But that does not preclude the idea of working by ocean basin. And we did talk about this, but states need to make the decisions for ocean basins. So it's one or the other. This is an ongoing conversation, though. So we'd love to hear your thoughts and your feedback on that. Larissa, do you want to answer that, Maxime, or shall I? Larissa's asked how the pilot projects were requested and selected, and what will be the output in recipient country, and do these pilots correspond to which services do they respond? Okay.
Go for it.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Larissa. So the deep sea mining project, which was requested by France quite early on in the IPOS evolution process, while we were still developing the project, and was an opportunity for us to begin testing and learning. As Maxime said, we're building the bridge, we're walking across the bridge as we build it. So it's been a process of learning and developing these services. But the request was from France to look at the science on deep sea mining or on deep sea exploration and to see what the scientific community says. So it relates more to ocean sustainability as a general theme, and I guess SDG 14 to some extent on ocean sustainability, but also a really more of a global conversation. The other pilots were organically developed. We realized that AI was an emerging tool and that we really wanted to pursue the objective of providing a rapid response, that scientists need, policymakers need responses in shorter timelines. So that process was begun, and then Seychelles approached us, Maxime, to engage on
we approached them. We had met them in some events, and then we said, oh, it could be a great opportunity.
Okay. And then the other project on the IPLC engagement has been more of a bottom-up approach from the civil society sector in Costa Rica with Cope Salazar and other partners in Costa Rica that represent thousands of fishers who are really challenging, are being challenged by the objective of 30 by 30 and how it will be integrated. And it was an opportunity for us to work with trusted partners in a really unique and intimate relationship through the relationship that's been established by the team, to check and test our engagement process, our equity guidelines, and to develop a topic that we believe is really important globally at the moment. But the process will become more formal once IPOS is in its test phase, and there will be a formal process of requesting advice and a selection criteria that will be applied to that, which we can talk about more if you like. We can get onto some other requests. Guillermo, do you want to take the next question?
Sure, absolutely. So this anonymous attendee expressed a very valid concern about how thinly spread our community is. I think we're being bombarded by Zoom calls and emails and forming parts of commissions and working groups. So I don't think that IPOS in a way is going to make that better. We are asking experts to engage in something that might be time consuming. What I will say is that each of the services will be funded. They will have concrete timelines, concrete objectives. So the delivery of the services won't go on and on forever. So the amount of time that we would be asking experts for would be sort of explained upfront. Their time will also be compensated. Financial compensation, we believe, is really important, not only for decision makers and scientists, but if you engage a local fisher and they have to be part of this hybrid working group and not go fishing, their time needs to be worth it. So hopefully this is another way of making sure that engagement is meaningful. And something else that comes to mind is that, yes, even though we are all very thinly spread, I would also say that we are still we're not engaging meaningfully a very large number of ocean stakeholders. So we have early career ocean professionals, for instance. So if we can diversify the number of ocean stakeholders that we bring in, we might be able to make sure that we're not putting excessive pressure on those who are already engaged. So these hybrid working groups for the ocean action requests will be comprised of about 15 experts. And if we can strike a balance between different stakeholder groups, hopefully we do not overburden those, like you mentioned, who are already being called by IOC, IPBS, or IPCC to partake in panels. So hopefully by spreading the load, we will achieve that objective, but also engage a much broader group of stakeholders who historically not been engaged meaningfully enough. But great question.
Thanks, Guillermo. I think another point that also responds to that question is the fact that if we have a consolidated, cohesive allocation of resources and intellectual capacity that is focused on bringing together these different elements to respond to specific ocean questions. We could reduce pressure on ocean professionals by actually collating knowledge across these different institutions and using these resources in a more rational and cohesive way for a systems approach. I would hope that we can achieve that. There's another question on the Decade Center, and is the expectation that the host organization resources the staff in the center? So no, the understanding at the moment is that for the application for the resource for the center, we would finalize and present resources that are ready to be implemented once this is approved. So the expectation is not on the host organization to provide all of the resources, but to participate to the extent that they select to choose to participate.
And also, Tanya, if I can add something here, we know that the IPOS will run only if we come with external funding. The idea is not to take funding from already existing organization or process or mechanism. So the idea is to arrive with external funding so we can hire new staff and not take the staff from already hosting organizations. That's what we have in mind so far. And in the discussion we had with IUC or with UNEP or with whoever, it was always very clear that the idea is not to IPOS take some of their staff, but actually bring external funding.
No resources, yeah. Thanks, Maxime. So we have Pablo from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Costa Rica asking the outcomes of our consultation process with UN entities, and are some of them interested, and how do we concretely envision our participation in UNOC? Okay, so shall I take some of this, Maxime?
Yes, this one. I will go for UNOC and you take the...
Okay, all right, yes. So we have had several engagements with UN agencies, and there have been lots of questions, lots of checking on how IPOS would work, verifying some of the propositions, and we really believe that we have refined and responded to most of the concerns and questions, and that we're offering something which is a unique value add. So we are receiving support and positive feedback from UN entities, and we're in conversation with multiple UN entities at the moment to, of course, the best solution for us would be to step forward with all UN agencies supporting the idea of a science policy or knowledge policy interface. That would be the ideal situation. But we are in conversation with multiple UN agencies and progressing well. So that is, we don't have a final outcome on that yet. In terms of UNOC, Maxime?
Yeah, in terms of UNOC, so UNOC would be a key element for us. It might be like the launch pad of the IPOS. So definitely we are very much engaged in the UNOC and OSC. I guess several of you are also applying for TANHOS. The deadline is on Friday, as a kind reminder for everyone. So we'll be having hopefully a dedicated session at OSC. We applied for it. We also applied for a specific TANHOS on specific topics like deep sea, or we might have something pretty exciting on AI. And also at UNOC, we're going to apply definitely to be there at the panels, but also having some side events. And then hopefully we are working hard to find a way to kind of celebrate the launch, if it's working, on a nice venue. Nothing is confirmed yet, but definitely UNOC would be a highlight for us. So we hope to meet you all there.
Thanks, Maxime. So a follow-up question on integration of terrestrial, freshwater, and marine experts in policy, and ideally not separation. Yes, 100% agree with that we definitely need to be looking at a systems approach. And this is one of the elements that came out of our best practices analysis and our benchmarking, was that ocean issues are completely integrated into other Earth systems and need an integrated response. So if we haven't communicated that well, then we intend to have a systems approach that does integrate across these different systems. And Indigenous nations are rights holders with ancestral governance structures and protocols. Can they issue action requests in addition to being sources of knowledge? And will Indigenous knowledge holders be involved in the scientific committee? Thank you, Anne. Those are great points. And of course, we acknowledge that Indigenous nations have their own governance protocols and ancestral structures. In terms of whether they could request action requests, I know that there's been a shift to declaring some state kind of status to Indigenous communities in Canada, but I'm not sure yet if we can give you a concrete answer on whether Indigenous communities would be able to request an action request. I think this is something that we would need to discuss with the UN agencies that we collaborate with. But I hear your point, and it's very valid. And of course, Indigenous knowledge holders will be involved in the Knowledge Committee, and they are engaged in all of our committees and processes. Maxime, do you want to have another one?
On the center conservation and food security all over economic objectives, really what the mission of the IPOS is to help states match SDG targets and CBD targets. And I think Guillermo can answer a bit more than myself on this, but these targets have like a conservation and food security over economic growth. So definitely I would say it's a yes. But Guillermo, if you want to add anything, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's hitting the nail on the head on these sort of trade-offs that many states and communities have to make when deciding which activities to allow or not. And there are no silver bullets. What we hope to do with the Ocean Action Request is to bring relevant stakeholders and knowledge holders to the table, perhaps those who traditionally don't speak with one another, but who have to converse and have difficult conversations in a more neutral setting to be able to reach these compromises and identify trade-offs. So you can, at least in my perspective, is that IPOS strives to become this neutral space with experts in co-production and debate moderation to be able to strike a balance between these multiple societal objectives. But of course, food security and conservation are both enshrined in, for instance, the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, and the members of those hybrid working groups will be aware of the multiple objectives that will have to be taken into account, even if the request is around one particular challenge. So SDG 14.4 and overfishing is a good example. So they will the outcomes, the propositions for the state on a plan forward will definitely have to take into consideration these elements. And once the hybrid working group has concluded its assessment, just a reminder that these will be independently evaluated before publication. So that will be another opportunity for independent experts to make sure that these important topics are well addressed in the final products. Thanks for the question.
Thank you very much, Guillermo. 2 questions left, and we have 4 minutes left. So we can go quickly on this. For the decade, the timeline is that there is this Ocean Decade Steering Committee end of March, and this is our target to apply. So I guess answer might arrive early April, but it's going to be like a ongoing process, but at least we are trying to have this. And then Caroline, on your question on how do we engage horizontally with local communities or with youth? This is a really good question. And this is all the objective of this Forum Polls third service that we are currently designing. The idea is really to have this bottom-up approach with plenty of questions, suggestions, solutions to be presented and pushed to states. So we make sure that actually non-state actors can actually be engaged and proactively work with the IPOS. How does that going to work exactly? We are still designing it. We're going to have some work early January within the team and other stakeholders to make sure we make something that makes sense and which is actually impactful. But definitely, it's a clear objective that we want to address. And then on your side, yeah, Guillermo.
No, sorry. I just wanted to address the multiple language question. Just for instance, one of the surveys, our colleagues at Vital Ocean, who are developing this large language model, are already testing some of the questions that they're posing to the algorithm in multiple languages to make sure that the answers are consistent across languages, even if the source literature may not be in that given language. So when it comes to the rapid response, and large language models, I think can take that. What would happen if an ocean action request is presented or requested by multiple states in a region that speak various languages? How would that hybrid working group of experts communicate? I think there's some experts who've faced that challenge before us, and we might have to find, for instance, bilingual moderators or leverage technology to make sure that everyone's on the same page. But the possibility of having to operate in multiple languages, whether it be South America, Asia, Europe, or Africa, is a reality. And I think in the test phase after UNOC, I think there are lots of lessons yet to be learned on how we make IPOS inclusive linguistically as well.
Thank you, Guillermo.
How will you prevent AI bias in the automated response? I started to answer this. It's a good question. So first, it will not be an automated response. There will always be a human in the loop. The IPOS team will be coordinating the question and interacting with the state asking the question. And there will be experts on the specific topic that will be there to peer review the answer. And the tool really will be developed, or is developed actually, to make sure that it's not like there is as little as bias as possible, or we're trying to go down to zero. Few examples on what do we do. The source of knowledge for now will be only like scientific papers. It's not a black box as ChatGPT, where you don't know where the answer is coming from, but it will tackle only scientific papers or sources that have been approved by the knowledge committee saying, yes, this can go into the IPOS Ocean GPT. And we are also including other kind of knowledge, for example, like a regulatory framework, the country or global regulatory framework, to make sure that actually we go beyond science, but also go into the natural context of the country. And yeah, like that's the main objective of the tech team is to reduce this bias and to reduce this hallucination.
Thanks, Maxime. Do you want to discuss about Germany, about who at a country level we've been discussing with?
So yeah, in Germany, we had a workshop 10 days ago, actually, with 15 people from 3 ministries. So ministries of environment, Ministry of Education and Science, and the last one was Ministry of Transport and Digital. I can share with you all the full list if you wish, but it's mostly people related to ocean in this kind of 3 ministries.
Thanks, Maxime. We have a question on the composition of the steering committee. I may hand over to Guillermo here, but just to say that we're in the process of developing this in conjunction with states and UN entities. And our current vision is that there will be regional representatives from these different regions. But Guillermo, would you like to add any more context or content to that response?
Thank you for the question, and good morning, everyone. I think the analogy, the best case comparison that comes to mind is the UN Ocean Decade Advisory Board. So it's an independent group of experts from diverse professional and demographic backgrounds who can, from sort of a near position, but not being part of the Secretariat itself, be able to provide guidance, make sure that the mission and vision of the organization is being fulfilled, and use their professional networks to make sure that IPOS remains relevant and connected with the relevant stakeholders for each question. So the specifics of the composition are yet to be determined. Of course, state composition is important, but so is the composition or representation of other stakeholder groups. So that is, to be honest, is still not settled, nor is the size of that body settled. But similar to the advisory board of the Ocean Decade, the membership will rotate over time. We will make sure that new voices are brought into the picture and try to keep up with the evolution of the sort of ocean sustainability field.
Yeah. Paul has asked an interesting question around how do we plan to have dialogue with key economic players like the oil and gas lobbies? An interesting question, Paul. Not a very easy one to respond to, but I think the clear answer to that is to stick with the science and to stick with the knowledge that we develop. So IPOS has processes that we've really been strongly working on to retain impartiality, to ensure that we're transparent, that we have processes that are open and collaborative, and the knowledge that we produce is co-constructed and free of influence. So we have set in place many processes to establish this clarity and this transparency and to deliver the science, to deliver the knowledge in the most clear and transparent way possible. So that is how we propose to engage with this. And I'm sure that it's more complex than what I'm saying, but we will include adaptability and reflexivity to see where processes need to be adjusted to ensure that we keep coming back to the core principles of the IPOS. Maxime, do you want to take the question on UNOC?
Yeah, sure. So UNOC will be a key moment for us. Could be the birth of the IPOS, could not be, we'll see. Depends on the coming months. But ideally, so we are applying for plenty of events and side events at UNOC and then also at OOSC to present the IPOS that will be fine-tuned in the coming months, but also to present the pilot project. For example, our pilot project on deep sea, but AI will be there also. Ideally, what we want to have here also is to show them that the IPOS will be within the ocean decade first, and to show there is this growing momentum around it. So what we expect and what we work on is to build maybe not a coalition, but a group of organization, scientific organization, state, international organization that actually officially support the IPOS. And this is something that will show the momentum around it and kind of kickstart the first 24 months of this phase. So can you hear me well? Because I see my connection is not amazing.
Yeah. Can hear you.
Yeah, all right. I don't know, Tanya, if you want to add anything to this.
No, I think that was great, and we hope to be working really strongly on a strong narrative at UNOC for elevating the ocean conversation in general, with some teams that we're in discussion with as well. It's going to be a very pivotal moment for the planet, the next UNOC, I believe, and very important decisions that will need to be taken. I'm going to move to the next question from Jill, which is that what strategies will we use to work with policymakers so that findings from your work have the greatest chance of being adopted and integrated into relevant advice? I think that's a really great question, Jill, and a really important question. So the way that we've approached this topic is really to create something that is a dynamic interface between the people asking the questions, the civil servants or the policymakers or the practitioners, and the people responding to those questions, so that there is an ongoing active dialogue between both parties through the process. So if one thinks about the Ocean Action Request taking place over the course of a year, there would be constant iteration and discussion with the state. And the fact that the question is being asked by the state, from the get-go, we believe already elevates the chance that the advice is really being sought and is really necessary. And then the process of developing the response through this iterative process, we believe, will have the greatest chance of being integrated. Also by including local scientists and regional scientists and knowledge holders, so that it's contextually relevant and contextually relevant for the mandate of the person that's implementing that action as well. So that's our approach to that. I want to take over some questions, Maxime.
Yeah, question on fisheries. So do you have any current project on fisheries or overfishing issues? I would say yes and no. The pilot project we have in Costa Rica on 30 by 30 is working on fisheries and sustainable fisheries related to 30 by 30. So it has to be started yet, but it's gonna cover this kind of issue, which is on the top of some art of some people from the team. Guillermo is a fishery expert. I love this topic too, but then it's a question where it's kind of demand driven. Sometimes we cannot choose the topics.
Yes.
I will go to the next question, which is a key question on the funding and the budgeting. Is will the work be pro bono in the ocean action request, or will it be kind of covered? It's something that actually is at the heart of the design of the budgeting, that if we ask the member of the working group to be pro bono, there will be a huge bias towards the global north, a large institution. If we want to be very inclusive, if we want to work in seats, if we want to work in all across the globe, we have to cover the cost of the time that people invest in the IPOS product. So we are currently designing a fee for every expert that will be including within the working group to cover the time, actually, or to pay the time. This is still a pending discussion, but it's going to be like a few €1,000. Is it 3? Is it 5? Is it 10? It will depend on the budget we can raise and also on the size of the working group that we are currently designing. But definitely it's a yes, we will cover.
I'd like to just add to that, Maxime, if I may. One of the objectives of really answering fast and providing rapid responses within shorter timelines requires that there is capacity that can be gathered and engaged. And we believe that the ocean community is already overextended by doing so much pro bono work. So we believe that it's really important to actually value the science, value the knowledge, and to be inclusive, as Maxime has said.
I will start with the next one. Overlap and duties and responsibilities. Everything we do is meant for avoiding a lot of overlaps, but creating synergies. What I would say that's, first of all, what we believe, and that's why we think there is a clear connection with Ocean Decade and the IOC maybe at some point, that there is a lot of science that has been done, but also by the World Ocean Assessments. But the Science to policy has to be accelerated, and this is in this kind of big niche. It's not a niche, it's a big niche where we want to sit. And that's why in the governance, we really want to include the panels, other organizations, to make sure that actually there is no overlap, but mostly synergies.
Yes.
I don't know, Guillermo or Tanya, if you want to add on this to make sure it's clear.
I think just the words connective tissue. I really like that description of there is a really dense, complex landscape of institutions at the ocean interface, but it's still not delivering action in the way that's needed. And what we're hoping is that the IPOS can become the connective tissue between all of these different institutions and really bring together the different types of knowledge to ensure that we have this comprehensive, cohesive systems approach to ocean knowledge. The next question is a little bit more complicated from Zen. So does IPOS have... Yes?
Maybe I can take the first one, and I think Guillermo, the second one would be for you, and the third, let's say, Tanya, if you wish.
Sure.
But the stakeholder engagement strategy, yes, we have designed with a consortium, so with plenty of people here around the table, this stakeholder engagement strategy, which will allow us to engage with states, with international organizations, with private sector, with all kind of stakeholders. It's not and we focused for now, because we are a tiny team, on what we believe are the key potential partners for the IPOS. This will then grow year after year, and maybe we have like some hole in the but for now we focused on the key countries that we believe could be supportive for the IPOS, and the key UN organization and the key panels. Then how it will be decided, once it's launched, everything will be kind of, and this is what we are designing in the blueprint, where you will find all the processes and the way decisions are taken. This will be like all the transparent approach. For now, it was based on the consortium approach of where do we focus and how do we engage with these kind of topics.
So in terms of the second question, I think the success of IPOS will in part depend on its ability to develop a representative network, what we're calling the IPOS Knowledge Network. It is not, we will not be able to predict, or IPOS will not be able to predict the topic or region where ocean action requests or questions will come from. And that implies that we have to be on our tiptoes and be able to bring in relevant knowledge holders in a timely manner from anywhere in the world. So in order to do that, we, like Tanya said in her presentation, a centralized approach would be very ineffective, and it's likely pose representation challenges. So we're taking a polycentric approach when it comes to the formation of this network. We have not yet set the geographic scale, but you can imagine if you have sub-regions all across the ocean where regional experts are able to identify knowledge holders across each of the, let's say, SDG 14 targets, such that in that given region, if an ocean action request or rapid response request comes in for SDG 14.4 on overfishing, hopefully the network will be able to provide and bring together the right voices. And of course, in terms of the criteria, that is still in the making, but career stage background, so that we don't only have sort of natural scientists, we need practitioners, we need fishers, we need lawyers. So making sure that the group is diverse from a professional, generational, and demographic perspective is a challenge. Now, the last thing I'll say is that is a big lift. So IPOS, like has been said before, will try not to duplicate their efforts. There are already many networks that we can leverage. So the idea is to get the right voices in the room in a timely manner, and it would be naive and not very useful to try to build that from scratch. So we will try to leverage existing networks as much as possible.
Thank you, Guillermo. So the third question, there really isn't a clear answer to what the legal status would be if IPOS was established as a coordinating center, because there are different possibilities for a decade coordination center. It's almost a conglomeration of partnerships that can be a coordinating center that work together under an agreement to become a coordinating center. Or IPOS could somehow be integrated within the IOC umbrella more formally in time after the test period or first testing phase. Or there are other options as well. I really don't believe that is up to the team that's developing this concept and the consortium to decide. I think that's something that will emerge from state input and from UN organization input and will evolve of its own accord. So we're in the process of having those conversations and seeing how that shapes up. I hope that's a sufficient answer for now, but I can't give you a clearer answer than that. I think the question from Riku is very interesting around twinning, knowledge exchange. If you want to take this one, Guillermo, on how will we facilitate best practice exchange between countries and regions so that the other countries have a potential of learning from them?
Yes, two things come to mind. The first thing is that when ocean action requests are received, hybrid working groups will be formed. And the reason they're called hybrid instead of national or regional working groups is that they will incorporate, bring together national and regional experts, of course, but also international experts who may have experience and who may have helped address that specific challenge in a different region. So that's one way in which we hope we can cross-pollinate experiences from different regions. And the other thing that comes to mind is that all outputs from all requests will be made publicly available. And IPOS is considering, or towards IPOS is considering the publication of biannual reports where all the learnings, the co-construction processes, methodologies, policy options, whether or not they're adopted, they will all be made publicly available. So hopefully over time, IPOS will build a growing repository of what recommendations were made to a given state or states to address a specific challenge. So hopefully that will help accelerate the adoption of some of those options in other regions and shared learning.
Thanks, Guillermo.
Yeah, we have 4 minutes left, so we may be going to be quick on the remaining questions. First, on the location of the center, where will it be based? So first, there will be several offices in the different regional offices, so maybe on each continent, and central unit. It's still to be discussed. If we are getting closer to IOC, it might be Paris. If we are also getting closer to UNEP, it might be also Nairobi. If we are getting closer to another organization, it might be somewhere else. Tanya is based in Cape Town, for example. I don't know. But so for now, it's still to be discussed, but Paris might be an option.
Yes.
How do we, like the expectation from the private sector? It's very key for us in the hybrid working group to include all kinds of stakeholders, including private sector. Especially in this kind of, for plenty of countries, the ocean sustainability goes really hand in hand with blue economy and blue jobs. So definitely we need to include like the private sector with us. Would there be the fishing industry, but also like a renewable energy or plastic waste management, all these kind of things. So definitely in the working group, we'll include stakeholders from the private sector. It's a clear cut. Then on the early career professional and scientists, what we are doing is that we are designing inclusivity and equity guidelines to make sure that this working group are actually inclusive and include indigenous people, but also like youth. So we'll have a set of criteria to design the working group to make sure that at every point of for every project we have, there are youth involved, but not only youth. It's like, yeah, we'll be
If I could just add, Maxime, the early career engagement will not just be in these ad hoc hybrid working groups, but also it will be reflected in the actual composition of the governance of IPOS as well. Knowledge Committee, the Knowledge Committee development team that Tanya mentioned has ECOPS in its membership. So it's not going to be a tokenized approach where you're selectively brought in and out, but rather representation will be permanent.
True.
Indeed. Thank you.
Belmont Forum. I don't know, Tanya, if you want to answer this one.
We haven't had formal engagement yet with the Belmont Forum, simply because it's a question of time and everyone just being stretched to the limit with everything else. So, but we definitely would like to engage with the Belmont Forum. But we've had conversations with some of our networks in South America that are participating in the Belmont Forum, but we haven't yet had an opportunity to have a formal meeting or engagement, but we would like to.
Yeah, so if you want to send us an email or connect us with them, we'd be more than happy.
Yes. Indigenous people are involved, indeed. We've had several wonderful workshops with Indigenous and local communities at the UN Ocean Decade Conference, and also previously the year before at the UN Ocean Conference, we had a wonderful side event with small-scale fisheries representatives of tens of thousands of fishers. We've also just had a team at Kali working with small-scale fishers, engaging with them, and we've developed this equity guideline that I think Guillermo mentioned to how to engage with small-scale fishers or with IPLC in general, and we will be testing that in our pilot project that we're developing in Costa Rica. Oh, I think we're running out of time. The guidelines for governance, Dina, are being developed and are very comprehensive based on an enormous analysis of best practices across more than 30 organizations, and are being included in our blueprint, which will be publicly available and shared as soon as it's complete. And then Joel is asking if questions come from the government, will the priorities will be reflecting government priorities, which is a challenge in itself, Oh yes, criteria for selection. So that's a great question, Joel. We are working on that and are very aware that we need selection criteria, which we're going to do collaboratively, co-construct collaboratively with states and other stakeholders to ensure that the way in which topics are selected and chosen are clear, have guardrails, and are set out and are publicly available. So that will be a focus, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on that if you want to get in touch with us. I think we're out of time. But thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
And thank you for the interesting questions and your engagement and being present with us. Please, I will share my screen so that you can just see the website. And
yeah, maybe a final note on the. It's a call for you all because we need you, and we need a large community to join the momentum. So please don't hesitate to engage. If there is any question that you didn't ask and you want to ask, please continue to engage. Next steps is you're gonna get in your email box, I guess by tomorrow, the slides plus the recording of this session. Don't hesitate to answer and ask any more, some more questions, and we're here for this. And the last thing I wanted to share before Tanya can conclude is to thank also our financial supporters, because this is how we can proceed. So we have a main donor, which is the European Commission, but also the French Republic, and then private donors and philanthropies that support the initiative, and thanks to who we can all work and have this team. And I also wanted to thank the teams that you've seen, Michaela and Michaela, we are here, Luca was here, and the rest of the team was there this morning to prepare all this session. It's been a lot of work, but we are very happy to share before the end of the year where we stand.
indeed. Yes,
Tanya?
thank you so much. Thank you to the team, and thank you to everyone for joining us for the session. And we look forward to hearing from you and engaging with you further.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.